Hello, Canada.
This is Bryan Adams Radio, hosted by Bryan Adams himself.
We'll play a few of mine, a ton of my favorites, and some must-hear behind-the-scenes stories from the world of rock and roll.
I'm coming to get you!
One thing about doing rock and roll so long is you end up meeting a lot of the people that you admire. Sometimes you even get to work with them.
It's only love, and that's all.
Bryan Adams Radio.
I'm coming back to you.
Now available on the free iHeartRadio app.
Hey everybody, how are you tonight? Sounds great.
Welcome, ghouls, to today's episode of Mental Health is Horrifying. I'm your horror Barbie host of darkness, Candace Green, psychotherapist and all-around spooky bitch, podcasting from my bat-filled cave in Toronto, Canada. My ghouls, I love this movie. I love Forbidden Fruits. I can't remember the last time I watched a movie one night, went to bed, and then watched it again the next day. I think about this movie every day, and I need to get it on DVD so I can own it and sleep with it under my pillow. It's a horror comedy, which is one of my favorite genres, but it's also like if you mixed Mean Girls, The Craft, Scream, and Clueless, put them all in a blender, and came out with this perfect movie. I am so very grateful that this movie exists and that pink horror is becoming more popular, because pink horror is such a glorious, safe space to explore the horrors of womanhood, while also reclaiming the wounded parts of our girly pop selves. After a limited theatrical run, Forbidden Fruits just received international release to video on demand and is hopefully coming to a streaming service in your area if you don't already have it. Here in Canada, you can watch it on Shudder as of right now. This episode will contain some generalized info about the themes in the movie, but is overall spoiler-free, in case you haven't had the absolute privilege of watching this movie yet. Okay, so let's get right into it. Let's check out Forbidden Fruits and the therapeutic benefits of pink horror. Here is my super quick, spoiler-free overview of Forbidden Fruits. Honestly, watch this movie immediately. Marilyn Monroe commands you. Apple, fig, and cherry are the glamorous it girl saleswomen of the most popular store in the mall, Free Eden. They recruit fellow mall employee Pumpkin, rescuing her from the non-it girl job she currently has at the pretzel counter in the food court. Pumpkin is quickly initiated into a coven with her fellow Free Eden girly pops, where they worship at the altar of Marilyn Monroe, text messages sent entirely in emojis, and Y2K mall culture. Everything about this seems awesome and magical at first, but Pumpkin and her fellow coven members quickly discover that perhaps the scariest thing in this retail basement backroom is their charismatic, witchy leader. Director Meredith Allaway describes Forbidden Fruits as Mean Girls, but a slasher, and that's literally all I needed to hear to press play. The movie is a horror comedy starring Lily Reinhart, Lola Tung, Victoria Pedretti, Alexandra Shipp, Emma Chamberlain, and Gabrielle Union. Diablo Cody was a producer on this film, which makes complete sense as she is the genius writer behind some of my other favorite horror movies like Jennifer's Body and Lisa Frankenstein. The movie is based on the play Of the Woman Came the Beginning of Sin, and Through Her We All Die, directed by Lily Hutton, who co-wrote the adapted screenplay for Forbidden Fruits with Holloway. And man, did they do an amazing job with this screenplay, because it's filled with amazingly quotable lines that encapsulate the complex horror of being a woman. Lines like, "My job doesn't define me, my hotness and personality do," and "I went on a hot girl jog this morning. Could someone having a nervous breakdown go on a jog?" And also, "Obvi, I'm not pregnant. What if I had a boy and had to name him like Bob or some shit?" The costume designer for Forbidden Fruits is Canadian Sarah Millman, and we have to talk a bit about these costumes and the whole Y2K-esque aesthetic of the movie, because it's truly like it's its own character. Millman conjured the fruits through mood boards comprising thousands of images from her personal archive and Toronto's reference library, big up TPL, while using director Meredith Holloway's visual deck as a jumping-off point. "I looked at the classics, she said, like Mean Girls, which we shot at the exact same mall. The Craft, Jennifer's Body, Jawbreaker, Heathers, and spent time rewatching just to get into the world," she says. From there, each fruit got her own visual universe with about 20 to 30 costume changes each. Millman cites other influences for the fruits as early Lana Del Rey, Rose McGowan, Devin Aoki, Anna Nicole Smith, Bridget Bardot, Aaliyah, Fairuza Balk, Uggs as a metaphor for suffering, and 90s mall goths. Oh, I am salivating. Millman's sourcing operation was a full-time job in itself. She wrote to over 100 brands to see if anyone would lend pieces to the production. Of those 100 plus cold emails, around 20 said yes. American Eagle came on as a sponsor, supplying all the denim in the film, the tanks, and the basics. Reformation sent a significant haul, while Agent Provocateur supplied bustiers and lingerie. The bags the girls carry were largely vintage, Y2K purses, thrift finds, and a couple of juicy couture pieces thrown in for fun. Okay, I am deceased. Getting the aesthetic right felt like such a big part of the movie, and submerging the audience in a pink horror universe that makes Forbidden Fruits such a standout in the category. Pink horror is a term that originated in the literary world to describe works that address the everyday horrors that women experience in their everyday lives through the horror genre. While there is no universal experience of womanhood, many grapple with limiting expectations of womanhood, including projecting perfection, to be prim and proper, nice, small, quiet, and beautiful. Pink horror celebrates flawed, unlikable female characters who navigate familiar challenges like abuse, grief, identity, motherhood, love, rage, and in certainly the case of Forbidden Fruits, the complicated dynamics of female friendship and the search for belonging. Pink horror has certainly found its way into the film world, depicting the horrors of womanhood in movies including Jennifer's Body, The Ugly Stepsister, The Substance, Black Swan, The Love Witch, and of course, Forbidden Fruits. While pink horror doesn't necessarily need to be pink in aesthetic, the recent explosion of pinkness you see in some of these films does feel like a reclaiming of the wounded feminine. Growing up in the late 90s and early 2000s, I was a victim, like perhaps you were, of the cool girl archetype. Do you remember her? We thought we had to repress anything overtly feminine about ourselves in order to be accepted. Our own desires, interests, wants, and preferences. It wasn't cool to like girly things. Boys made fun of us for liking the Spice Girls and boy bands, so we pretended to like the same grimy, unwashed bands that they liked, so they would think we were cool. I had a boyfriend in university whose bedroom walls were plastered with naked women from the pages of Maxim, and I pretended not to be bothered because I was a cool girl. Man, if I could go back in time to that loser-ass bedroom, I'd grab my 19-year-old self by the arm and be like, girl, you're so much better than this. I have a clean apartment and all 6 seasons of Sex and the City waiting for you. Let's get out of here. Gillian Flynn wrote about the cool girl archetype in her sensational book, Gone Girl, which was, of course, turned into a movie starring Rosamund Pike and Ben Affleck in the clueless husband role he was perhaps born to play. Gillian Flynn's iconic femme fatale, Amy Dunn, says this about cosplaying the cool girl. Being the cool girl means I am a hot, brilliant, funny woman who adores football, poker, dirty jokes, and burping, who plays video games, drinks cheap beer, loves threesomes and anal sex, and jams hot dogs and hamburgers into her mouth like she's hosting the world's biggest culinary gangbang while somehow maintaining a size 2, because cool girls are above all hot. Hot and understanding. Cool girls never get angry. They only smile in a chagrined, loving manner and let their men do whatever they want. Go ahead, shit on me. I don't mind. I'm the cool girl. It may be a slightly different version. Maybe he's a vegetarian, so cool girl loves seitan and is great with dogs. Or maybe he's a hipster artist, so cool girl is a tattooed, bespectacled nerd who loves comics. Men actually think this girl exists. Maybe they're fooled because so many women are willing to pretend to be this girl. Woo! Amy Dunn was crazy, but she was right. Femininity was something we were raised to be ashamed of. Pink horror tackles our internalized misogyny, challenging us to look right at the thing we have been most afraid of. In pink horror movies...
Do you ever think about a random pop culture moment?
Like something that dominated the culture and then quietly disappeared?
We do, constantly.
This is Bestie Listen.
Every week, we revisit the most niche corners of pop culture.
The stuff that shaped us, for better or worse.
And ask, what was that?
And more importantly, why do we love it?
We celebrate it.
We question it.
And give it the level of analysis it absolutely did not ask for.
Stream Bestie Listen on iHeartRadio, Crave,
or wherever you get your podcasts.
These like forbidden fruits. Everything is so pretty on the surface, but when you dig a little deeper, everything is just horrifying underneath. Like womanhood. In this secret society that meets behind closed doors, apple, fig, cherry, and pumpkin can name the twisted things they do that make them beautiful, cool, and desirable, but that hurt too. The incantation that the fruits do references the trappings of being a woman in this year of our Lord 2026, and I will now be reciting it before I put on my makeup every day. Goat's milk, thigh, gaps, rose petal, bone, cast, truffle oil, bitch, slap, blood clots, juice, prep. Praise Marilyn. What are some of the horrors of womanhood that the fruits face? Abandonment wounds are being projected left, right, and center in forbidden fruits, creating relational friendship dynamics that are somewhat toxic, to say the very least. Director Meredith Allaway described what being abandoned as a child can do to your future friendships. She said, being abandoned as a woman can pit you against other women, can increase your need to survive, which I think is why Apple's always trying to find the snake. In that moment, she thinks, unfortunately, my sister is the one who has created all of this chaos, and she has a psychological break and is just trying to survive. Apple's abandonment wound is triggered in the female friendships portrayed in Forbidden Fruits, which is called an enactment, meaning that people are acting out past traumas in the present and don't even know that they be doing it. Once you recognize, wait a second, I'm projecting my old stuff onto this relationship and assuming that the same thing is happening as before, it's no longer an enactment at that point. Hopefully, once someone realizes what they're doing, they can make better choices and stop putting hexes on their friends out of fear of abandonment. Apple is controlling, codependent, and afraid. Her female friendships aren't a safe refuge for her or a place to heal past attachment wounds. They are a relational trigger, bringing up old fears of abandonment. To shield herself from overwhelming feelings of shame, smallness, or helplessness, Apple makes herself into a larger-than-life caricature of womanhood, an almost impenetrable fortress of power, a magnetic force that women flock to, rather than a woman who gets left behind. As the head saleswoman at Free Eden, the hottest store in the mall where every cool girl wants to either work or shop at, she creates a protective coven of women around her abandonment wound in an attempt to convince herself she is wanted, while simultaneously pushing her friends away through her controlling behaviors in an unconscious attempt to demonstrate how little she needs people, to leave them before they leave her. Apple is a cool girl. She doesn't really need anyone. Anyone around her is replaceable because no one can affect her so much that she would ever miss them. At least this is what she tells herself, and this is how she has learned how to survive. Pink horror is a place where women can explore their own abandonment wounds and how they can show up in their own friendships. Forbidden Fruits pays homage to the films about complicated female friendships that we've already talked about, like Heather's Jawbreaker, The Craft, Clueless, and Mean Girls, Hail Marilyn. Alloway goes on to say of Forbidden Fruits, what if we use genre as a tool to help people understand how these people feel, how violent and chaotic and messy and beautiful and joyful female relationships can be? The whole point of the movie is that these women's relationships aren't perfect, that we're operating in systems that don't allow us to all survive in the way that we should. Amidst Apple's controlling reign of the coven, the other women, Fig, Cherry, and Pumpkin, constellate themselves around their tyrannical leader, unsure of how to relate to one another. The fruits do their best to fall in line, not rock the boat, and follow the group rules and norms created by Apple, lest they receive her ire. Like in so many toxic group dynamics, where a narcissistic leader is at the helm, Fig, Cherry, and Pumpkin are attempting to keep the peace in a group where there is, in fact, no peace to be found. When the girls practice magic as a coven, their patron goddess is Marilyn Monroe, perhaps the most shining example of the embodiment of the pain of womanhood. A woman who experienced so much trauma, who turned herself into this beautiful, glamorous creature, stuffing away her traumatized self just so she could survive. Marilyn Monroe is a character that Norma Jean Mortensen, which was her real name, created. She was a shield, an escape, a fantasy for a woman who grew up through incredible pain. Norma Jean's mother was institutionalized for schizophrenia, leaving her to grow up in an orphanage and 11 different foster homes. She endured severe emotional abuse, witnessed terrifying episodes with her mother, and was sexually assaulted throughout her time in the foster system. She split her identity into two, developing the glamorous Marilyn Monroe character to shield her traumatized, vulnerable inner self from the intense scrutiny of Hollywood. Like too many beacons of archetypal womanhood under the male gaze in Hollywood, Monroe tragically died from an overdose of barbiturates at 36. The coven feels a kinship with Marilyn as they navigate the world with their big Barbie smiles, all the while scared, confused, and lonely underneath their perfectly curated outfits from the Hilary Duff collection. Between references to the Garden of Eden throughout the store, including the ritual space they refer to as paradise, and praying to Marilyn as their patron goddess, the coven worships women who have been demonized. Forbidden Fruits is adapted from the play Of the Woman Came the Beginning of Sin, and through her we all die. What a metal name. Woman being the source of all sin is, of course, referring to the story of Eve, who allegedly picked the apple in the Garden of Eden and unleashed sin upon all of humanity, which is where the store name Free Eden comes from. Pink horror explores the sinful, monstrous feminine archetype very well, not only in Forbidden Fruits, of course, but I'm also thinking about movies like Carrie, The Witch, and Cat People. Women being portrayed as monstrous is a concept first explored by Barbara Creed in her book The Monstrous Feminine. This term refers to the interpretation of horror films conceptualizing women predominantly as victims. The final girl archetype began with the female heroine needing to be virginal, pure, and of good moral character in order to survive. Creed observes how women are positioned as victims within the horror film genre and challenges this one-dimensional understanding of women by arguing that when the feminine is fabricated as monstrous, it is commonly achieved through association with matriarchal tasks and traits or reproductive bodily functions. Creed's book was released over 30 years ago, so I wonder if she would have ever imagined the world of Forbidden Fruits, where the matriarchal tasks portrayed include selling overpriced scarves to momfluencers at the mall, and drinking cursed potions out of a bedazzled cowboy boot with your all-fruit name coven members. Where did the hatred and demonization of women begin? And how are a group of women in the mall, just trying to start a coven, supposed to combat biblical, millennia-old hatred towards them? In Sadie Doyle's book, Dead Blondes and Bad Mothers, she explores this demonization as portrayed in Christian myth. She says, in Christian myth, even the apocalypse is female. The book of Revelations prophesizes that the end times will be ruled by a lustful queen who carries a golden chalice full of abominations and filthiness of her fornication. She appears drunk on the blood of saints, covered in jewels, and riding a scarlet beast with 7 heads. And upon her forehead was a name written, Mystery, Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots and abominations of the earth. Man, I would love to party with her. Aristotle famously concluded that every woman was a mutilated male. Thomas Aquinas said that, were it not for their ability to bear sons, God would have been wrong to make women at all. He said nothing misbegotten or defective should have been in the first production of things. Rude. The title of the original play, Of the Woman Came the Beginning of Sin, and Through Her We All Die, is taken from Ecclesiasticus 25:24 in the King James Version of the Bible, which means something. Okay, I'm no biblical scholar, But I think it's safe to say that women were kind of set up to fail under these conditions, being branded as something sinful, wrong, other, where man is the original blueprint for morality and justice, and woman is an agent of chaos. The complicated legacy of womanhood is portrayed through the chaotic, complicated relationships in Forbidden Fruits, where the women themselves and their coven carry immense power as both sources of creation and immense destruction. There is a storm that comes later in the movie, as though it is the foretold female apocalypse herself, the Whore of Babylon. Okay, Carl Jung was a spooky bitch himself, and I swear that man was a witch. And he talks a lot about dreams and something that they do, which is called a compensatory function. This refers to the idea that dreams help maintain psychological balance by highlighting aspects of the unconscious that are neglected or repressed in conscious life. Dreams compensate for the one-sidedness of conscious experience, bringing unconscious material into awareness when all your defenses and nonsense are down while you're sleeping, to promote psychological wholeness. Horror movies, I believe, are collective nightmares, tapping into our collective unconscious, our fears, anxieties, and all that we find too big to carry on our own. The violence expressed by the fruits gives voice to the violence women experience in our everyday lives. They carry so much more emotional freight than we can on our own, and are able to give voice to and express elements of the shadow that we as the viewer have had to repress in order to survive, or to not end up in jail for homicide. Horror has not always been a genre that has been kind to women. Of course, it's not black and white, but as a lifelong horror fan myself, I definitely got the distinct feeling as I journeyed through the genre that it delighted in depictions of my pain and suffering. It felt like it just wasn't made for me, that it was for men, an exclusive hardcore horror club that I just didn't have access to, nor did I necessarily want to go to that grimy club. I want to go to the Pink Pony Club, where they play pink horror movies. Pink horror's unabashed expression of femininity is a compensatory function for the wounded feminine that has been relegated to the shadow. When Apple is sitting in the parking lot and a flasher with the license plate number 1 daddy pulls up next to her and she throws her mug of hot coffee on his exposed dick. Well, this is a fine example of emotional compensation for every woman who has ever been sexually harassed, afraid to walk alone at night, or catcalled in the streets by ugly losers. When Pumpkin locates an ex-employee of Free Eden and finds out that not everything is as it seems, this is an example of emotional compensation for every woman who has experienced betrayal inside the friendships that were supposed to keep her safe and sound. When the fruits exchange friendship bracelets adorned with the charms of their namesake fruit, this is an example of emotional compensation for every woman who has ever longed for a sense of sisterhood, belonging, and acceptance. Forbidden Fruits, though a twisted, often terrifying depiction of modern womanhood, is a world that I, as a viewer, wanted to escape into. Donning Cherry's Barbiecore outfits, dancing to Heaven by Bryan Adams with my best friends, in a secret coven only we know about. Alright, a tarot card that I associate with Forbidden Fruits and Apple in particular is the Hierophant. I see Apple portrayed as the head of a secret society, holding a position of power over the other members who play a subservient role to her. There is a difference in relationship to power and structure here, as exhibited by Apple being elevated and her disciples or coven members being beneath here. But the Pope depicted in this picture, who is Apple at the head of her coven, is nothing without her coven members. She is nothing without the other fruits. The hierophant is wearing a costume of sorts. They don robes designed to make them look grand, regal, and powerful. The cloak and crown look like they're quite heavy, and I kind of want to pull all of the theatrics back, all of the armor back to see what's underneath. Who's the real person hiding under there? The hierophant is about sharing wisdom, but what is the relational dynamic when you place those you are closest to at a distance from you because you are afraid of being abandoned or betrayed? Can the relationship ever be equal or fruitful? Unless Apple can risk vulnerability by removing the very thing that separates her from her coven, placing them on equal footing to her, letting go of control, she will repeat the relational trauma that brought her here in the first place. She will continue to perpetuate the narrative that women's relationships with each other must necessarily be deceptive, competitive, manipulative, and controlling, because this is what the world has done to us, and this is how the world has taught us to be in relationship with each other. She must take responsibility for her own suffering. The abandonment Apple experienced, it's not her fault, but it is now her responsibility to own and not harm others with it, particularly the women she is closest to. I can't tell you how much this movie means to me. I still struggle with claiming my identity as a horror fan because there is so much about this genre that doesn't speak to me or that feels too extreme, so I feel like a phony a lot of the time. I am a horror bebe, and a lot of what is offered in this genre is too extreme for me, too harsh, too ugly. The emergence of pink horror feels like someone placing their hand on my shoulder and telling me I'm welcome here and everything is going to be okay. Movies like Forbidden Fruits speak to my inner, or honestly outer, girly pop. That is maybe also a younger part of myself that felt ashamed for dressing up like Baby Spice, playing treehouse with my stuffed animals, and being a sensitive angel in a very harsh world. Like the four women in Sex and the City portrayed four parts of one whole woman, so do the women in Forbidden Fruits. I see parts of myself in each fruit. I can be insecure in groups of women like Apple. I am lonely and looking for a place to belong like Cherry. I am ambitious to the nth degree like Fig, and I want to discover the truth like Pumpkin. Maybe that's why I want to watch this movie every day, because for me, it just feels like coming home. And that, my ghouls, is the story of Forbidden Fruits and the divine therapy of pink horror. Mental Health is Horrifying is researched, written, and edited by me, Candace Green, registered and spooky psychotherapist, and proudly produced in partnership with iHeartRadio Canada. If you like this podcast, please consider rating and reviewing on your preferred listening platform. It really helps the show to reach all the other spooky ghouls out there, and I will be eternally grateful. And an eternity is a very long time for a vampire, okay? If you're a mental health professional who wants to learn how to ethically incorporate tarot into your clinical work with confidence, join Tarot for Creative Therapists, where you will learn practical exercises for how to support clients with tarot integrated therapy sessions alongside the evidence-based therapeutic modalities you already work with. You can follow me on Instagram at Mental Health is Horrifying, and you can also learn more about me and my services through my website, manymoonstherapy.com. Or you can also howl at the moon and I will hear your call. Bright blessings.
Hello, Canada.
This is Bryan Adams Radio. Hosted by Bryan Adams himself.
We'll play a few of mine, a ton of my favorites, and some must-hear behind-the-scenes stories from the world of rock and roll.
Coming to get you.
One thing about doing rock and roll so long is you end up meeting a lot of the people that you admire. Sometimes you even get to work with them.
It's only love, and that's all.
Bryan Adams Radio.
I'm coming back to you.
Now available on the free iHeartRadio app.
Hey everybody, how are you tonight? Sounds great.